Most preparedness content tells you to stockpile, stack it high, put it all in one room, label it, inventory it, post it online. That is not preparation. That is target marking. The first principle of any real supply plan isn't acquisition. It's denying knowledge that the supply exists. I'm drawing on Army Regulation 530-1 OPSEC Doctrine and Training Circular 31-29 Cache Emplacement Procedures. By the end of this video, you'll know the 11 categories most likely to be requisitioned under existing emergency authority. You'll know the veteran concealment protocol for each one. And later, I'm going to show you a medication category sold legally without a prescription, manufactured in the same FDA facilities as its human counterpart, that no requisition framework tracks. The people who lost their guns in New Orleans had them stored exactly where the prepper magazines told them to. Let's start with the one that kills you fastest: insulin and prescription medications. If you're dependent on a daily medication, your survival window isn't measured in weeks, it's measured in doses. The Defense Production Act of 1950 gives the federal government authority to redirect pharmaceutical production and distribution. The Public Health Service Act does the same for declared health emergencies. In 2020, both were used. Hydroxychloroquine supplies were redirected by federal order. Ventilator production was commandeered. Pharmacy distribution chains were restructured overnight. Your 90-day supply became whatever the allocation framework decided you were getting. Here's the civilian mistake. You fill your 90-day prescription. You put all of it in one medicine cabinet. Maybe you've got a fireproof safe. One location, one supply, one point of failure. When supply lines tighten, that cabinet is your entire lifeline, and everyone in your household knows exactly where it is. The veteran response is rotation and dispersal. You keep your working stock, whatever you're currently taking, separate from your reserve. Reserve stock stays in original pharmacy bottles with your name and prescription number intact. That matters legally. You store reserves across 2 to 3 temperature-controlled locations: a climate-controlled storage unit, a trusted family member's refrigerator, a secondary residence. You rotate stock on a 30-day cycle, first in, first out. Nothing expires on the shelf because nothing sits longer than 90 days. The math is brutal. Insulin left at room temperature above 77 degrees degrades within 28 days. Below freezing, it's destroyed. That means your cache locations need climate control year-round. This is the one medication category where dispersal requires infrastructure, not just discipline. If you're insulin dependent, 2 cached locations with reliable temperature control is the difference between management and crisis. I've written up a full guide on this entire subject for you. First link in the description: firearms and ammunition. In September of 2005, law enforcement and National Guard units in New Orleans conducted door-to-door firearm confiscations. The number of legally owned firearms seized was roughly 1,000. Legal, registered, stored exactly where you'd expect. The Disaster Recovery Personal Protection Act of 2006 was passed specifically because of what happened. But the law is a remedy after the fact. It doesn't stop the knock on the door. The civilian mistake is the visible gun safe. 800 pounds bolted to the garage floor, every firearm you own in one container, and every purchase tied to a Form 4473 sitting in a dealer's records. You've consolidated your entire defensive capability into a single searchable, seizable point. The veteran response draws from Training Circular 31-29. You distinguish between your accessible primary arms and your cached secondaries. Your primary stays where you can reach it. Your cached secondary goes somewhere else entirely. Ammunition gets stored in waterproof military surplus cans. Burial depth is 18 inches minimum. That depth defeats handheld metal detectors. The can gets wrapped in a contractor-grade trash bag, sealed with silicone, and placed in a PVC tube with capped ends. You mark the location with a reference system only you understand. No GPS pins, no written maps in the house. This isn't about hiding from the government. This is about making sure that one event, one order, one 12-hour window doesn't strip you of every option at once. Dispersal is insurance. The legal fight took years. The confiscation took minutes. Vehicle fuel. Executive order. 13603 explicitly lists energy resources, including petroleum, as subject to federal allocation. This isn't hypothetical authority. It's been exercised. The 1973 oil embargo triggered mandatory fuel allocation nationwide. After Hurricane Sandy in 2012, New Jersey and New York imposed odd-even rationing based on license plate numbers. Your access to gasoline was determined by whether your plate ended in an odd or even digit. The civilian mistake is the single visible fuel tank. A 200-gallon tank on a trailer or a 55-gallon drum in the garage. One location. Obvious, easy to catalog if anyone's inventorying neighborhood resources. The veteran response is dispersed NATO-spec jerry cans, 5-gallon capacity each, steel construction with positive locking spouts. You keep 6 to 10 of them across 2 to 3 locations. Fuel gets treated with PRI-G or stay bill at the time of filling. Gasoline degrades through oxidation on a 3 to 6 month curve. You defeat that curve by rotating through normal use. Fill the cans. Run your mower, your truck, your generator from the cans. Refill. You're always consuming the oldest fuel and replacing with fresh. Nothing ever sits long enough to degrade, and no single location holds more than 30 gallons. 30 gallons across 6 cans weighs roughly 180 pounds total. That's enough to move one vehicle 350 to 400 miles. That's your evacuation range sitting in a format no one thinks twice about. Cash in small denominations. Every modern disaster proves the same point. Katrina knocked electronic payment systems offline for weeks. Sandy did it for days. The 2021 Texas grid failure shut down card processing across entire regions. When the power goes out, your debit card is a piece of plastic. The civilian mistake is hundreds. A stack of $100 bills in a safe looks impressive, practically useless. Try buying a can of gas or a case of water with a $100 bill when nobody can make change. You've got the value. You can't spend it. Here's the other problem. Currency transaction reports trigger automatically at $10,000. Suspicious activity reports trigger on patterns that look like structuring. If you're withdrawing $9,000 every week, you're creating a record. The veteran response is small denominations dispersed gradually, 1s, 5s, and 10s. You withdraw small amounts over long periods. You keep them across multiple locations, a few hundred here, a few hundred there. No single cache large enough to be interesting. Total holdings between $1,000 and $3,000 in small bills. Your cost per function is zero. Cash doesn't degrade, it doesn't expire, it doesn't require electricity. And in the 72 to 96 hours after grid failure, it's the only universally accepted medium of exchange. A $5 bill buys cooperation that a credit card cannot. Now, pay attention to this one. Tampons and feminine hygiene products. This is where most lists stop. They shouldn't. The cellulose fiber construction of a standard tampon is specifically engineered for fluid absorption and wound channel packing. Military medics have known this since Vietnam. The documented use traces back further to World War I nurses repurposing surgical cotton for battlefield wounds. A tampon inserted into a narrow puncture wound or gunshot cavity